Right, everyone. So thanks so much for listening. If you're listening to us for the first time, please hit the subscribe button, like, and share this interview. We do it amazing people that are doing amazing things all around our great country and also all around the world we've done too. So thanks so much. Again, please subscribe, like, and share this video. So today, everybody, we have Jon Biemer on, and he has wrote a book, and it is 175 Earth Day tips on how to reduce your environmental handprint. Jon's done so many things in his life, and we're going to talk about that throughout the interview. So, Jon, thanks so much for coming on. Greatly appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
All right, so Jon, we got a lot to hit on, and I was really intrigued learning about you and seeing the book in general. Before the conversation started, I did tell you we have a lot of people that are progressive-minded environmentalists that do listen to this program. I do consider myself an environmentalist too, so I'm very intrigued of what you have to say. But before we even start into environmental issues in this country and even around the world, which there's so many, which we don't even have time to even talk about fully, but we'll kick those around in a minute. Can you talk about what made you want to write this book?
I am an environmentalist, as you say, and I've been one for a long time. I had a bit of a vision back in 2013. I woke up one morning and I realized there's a lot more good being done relating to the environment than gets our attention. Mostly, we hear the bad news, the global warming and the pollution, and those are all true, and they're all problems that need to be dealt with. But I started realizing there are things like efficient motors and windows that keep heat in, and light bulbs that are much more efficient. There's a whole realm of things that are just worthy of paying attention to. And that's what excited me about, hey, I've got to tell that story. And before that, I was actually working on the idea of the handprint, which is the proactive things we do as opposed to just problem solving. And so those two weave together, and that became the essence of the book.
Well, let's kick around the book. And, I know before COVID, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, that you weren't driving a car. You didn't own a car. You also weren't using a refrigerator. A lot of people say that they hear this, and not me personally, but, a lot of our viewers, when I talked about you coming on and bringing this up, they say, this guy is insane. This is crazy. And these people are environmentalists just like us. But I really admire what you're doing with that. The problem I feel like it is, and you can, hit this when you get into the answer is, unless you're living in a big city, it's very hard to, live without a car. You can do it in New York, Washington, D.C., other cities around the country. But if you're living in rural Pennsylvania or, rural Florida, where I am in Florida, it's tough to really not have a car since, everything is so far away in such a big state. So what would you tell people that, hear this and say, this guy's crazy for doing this. I could never do this. But a lot of it is, we never had cell phones until recently, and people, got around fine without that. I think it was probably better for our world without cell phones.
Let's start with the idea that my wife and I have been doing our best to walk our talk. We didn't do this just to write a book. And we've been trying our best to walk our talk for a while. So we have some environmental values that we've been applying to our own lives. And if I were talking, I am talking to other people, I'm saying, don't walk my talk, walk your talk. So let's just look at the little flaw in my talk for a moment here.
Okay.
I've been getting bills in the mail for a long time. These paper things that I never read, and they kill trees. Why am I doing that? Well, I'm not getting around to taking care of it. It took me years to get around to taking care of that one little problem with walking my talk, if you will. So I'm not asking people to let go of cars unless they're in a circumstance that's good for that. You know, our last child had left the home before we let go of our car. Before that, we were taking him to school and things like that, like other people were doing. And we had to get another car during COVID here to get across town to doctor's appointments. So I'm not asking people to be heroes. I'm asking people to find ways within their lives to do the best they can. So if you're a parent and you've got 2 little kids, read them environmental stories. Right. You know, help plant those environmental values that help them grow up being leaders. Help them grow up voting for people that care about the environment, and maybe even running businesses that are environmentally compatible. So I've pretty much tested myself. Give me a circumstance and I will tell you what that circumstance will actually be able to be proactive. I had a homeless person who handed me a big plastic garbage bag and said, "Pick up litter for me, please, because we're getting a bad name because we get blamed for all the litter." That's a homeless person being an environmental activist.
That's incredible. But you know what I think it is too, and this is Jon Biemer here on Fire Breathing Rob. John, I think the problem is that our society is so commercialized to, you have to have the cell phone, you have to have the big screen TV. You have to, have a water bottle. This is something that just came out maybe in the 70s and the 80s, where water bottles and, it's due obviously, and we're not going to go down the rabbit hole of Coke and Pepsi putting their, soda in the bottles, and then it just really went down. And obviously water is healthier, and they're trying to publicize that as it's a healthier choice. So, it's really sad because we've just recently did a show on oceans, and, we talk about, and you talked about this, is the plastic that people just leave, and it ends up going, either down the drain, into the oceans. They leave it on the beach. So it's a long, vicious circle. These animals eat this plastic, and then when they die, you open up their stomachs and there's tons of, microscopic plastic in them. It's really sad. And it's got, we're eating salmon or fish if you eat that, and it probably has microscopic plastic because these fish are eating it. So it's a vicious cycle that's not only hurting our oceans and the fish and the animals that live in it, but it's also going to end up hurting us because we're eating these fish, and it's going to go back into our body, where our body has plastic and chemicals in it. So,
well, plastic is problematic.
Right.
This is true. We've made an effort to minimize plastic by doing all sorts of non-disposable kinds of alternatives. So, the metal water bottle rather than the plastic water bottle, the eliminating plastic forks and paper plates, and, having real silverware and actually washing them when you go to potlucks. And if you've got a big event like a wedding, rent the place where it's needed and demonstrate your values rather than just say, well, this isn't the time to get around to getting rid of paper plates. Like, that's not important enough. Let's demonstrate our values rather than avoid our values.
Can you talk about, John, living without the refrigerator? I know we talked a little bit about living without the car. How did that work? Did you grow most of your food? I mean, because obviously you can't really have frozen food because, without the refrigerator, right. It's tough. But how did all that stuff go?
Well, when our youngest person left the home, so again, we have a circumstance that, right. So we're not feeding a whole family. My wife noticed that we're just putting condiments in the door mostly, so we were underutilizing our refrigerator. Okay. And then we observed that most of our diet is veggies and that sort of thing. So meat spoiling is not an issue for us. And that's really the only dangerous thing that you might want to think about relating to not living without a refrigerator is meat spoilage. And we have refrigerators in the community. They're called grocery stores. So you buy something that needs refrigeration and you eat it. And even things like milk will be good from two to 4 days. We have a food box in the shaded part of our house, and 6 months out of the year, you basically have outside refrigeration. Yeah. So there's just a lot of things that can add up to being able to live without a refrigerator. And if you notice, almost all of those things are environmentally good on their own. Yeah. Eating lower in the food chain is a good thing for the environment. So, okay. So if you can't live without a refrigerator, you can live without some of these other things that are causing us environmental.
You know, as a person, I told you most of the people that listen to this are 18 to 35. As a person that's in that demographic, most of the people I see, and you can correct me if you don't agree with this, that are in our demographic, they are these people that are environmentally conscious. They do walk a lot, they run a lot, they bike a lot. So what tips would you give them? Because, you know, if they're already doing those things, as far as maybe they're not driving as much, even if they do have a car, they're doing that biking, or, you know, maybe they don't have the electricity on 24/7 because they don't have a good job right now to pay the bill. But what tips would you give them?
Well, let's start with the idea that there's a whole spectrum of things you can do. Mm-hmm. So there's personal habits, and everything you said is a good personal habit. So what are you choosing to do with your employment? What are you choosing to do with your volunteer time? What are you choosing to do with your donations? And I want to actually emphasize donations. It took me a while to get to the idea that actually donations are one of the more important things we can do, because they align us with organizations that are actually focused on changing the system in one sense or another. You know, the older organizations like Nature Conservancy basically, you know, bought up the land that was being ruined, you know, in order to protect species. Now we have organizations that are, well, let's see, Southern, I'm not going to get the right name for it. Anyways, there's an organization in the South that basically teaches people to be environmental stewards in terms of cleaning up waste and things like that. And so it ends up being a dealing with the poverty and the racial issues right alongside the environmental issues. So there's all sorts of organizations out there that are really worthy of our support in one way or another. So I would say go beyond your personal habits and figure out what you're going to do with your spare time and with your life and with your dreams. What do you want to do over the next 20 years?
With the last three questions, John, I want to ask you this, and I think this is an extremely important question. A lot of people that hear this and read the book are going to be people that are environmentally conscious. But what would you say to the person that, you know, because we want to get to, obviously we want to, you know, hit the like-minded people, but you want to get to these people that are not like-minded. Maybe they don't believe in climate change. Maybe they think this is all a hoax. And you know, I hate to say this, it's really sad that we're even talking about this, but besides the point, how would you get to them as far as this book? Do you feel like you can affect them as far as somebody that doesn't believe in climate change? Maybe that's not an environmentalist. Do you feel like if they read this book, they may be able to get something out of it?
That's a fair question. That's a question I lose sleep on because those are the people I'd like to reach the most.
Yeah.
One is I try to be thoughtful about whatever their priorities are. So if their priorities are kids, let's leave that priority there. You know, if their priority is bringing food home to the family, let's leave that priority there. I'm looking for things that are not telling them they have to jump off a cliff. I'm looking for things that say, you know, you can do better. You can do better. And sometimes you can do things that are better for you. And I was looking around here a little bit. I don't have the list in front of me right now, but
Yeah.
there are things that are like in our interest to do better, where we can actually invest in renewable energy and that sort of thing and actually get a return. So I would say look for places where you can make a difference and it'll pay you back. And I'm going to just say, don't worry about being pure. Just do something. You know, in my book, I asked people to pick 5 things. 5 out of 178, I think. The book cover says 175, but there's 178 ideas in there. And they're just ideas. There's many and more things one can do. So you don't have to be a saint. What I'm asking you to do is just consider the earth that takes care of you in the decisions you make, the decisions about the schooling of your kids, the decisions about your meals, the decisions about your home, the decisions about your transportation. Because so many people just don't question that they need to do something or other because, and they have this simple answer of why. My sense is that it's really, there are always options that sometimes get overlooked, and especially when things break. You know, we didn't let go of our car because we didn't like our car. We got rid of our car because it broke. It wouldn't run anymore. And we decided, okay, now's the time to give it a try. And we tried it for a few months, and that ended up being 13 years.
Well, we'll move on to the last question, John. I do want to ask you as we close out, you know, what do you hope that, I guess, the people in general do learn from the book?
The last chapter I think it's titled Within Our Grasp or something like that. And the idea is that there are some trends and things like that we can actually turn the corner and actually make a big difference. We can turn agriculture into a carbon sink as opposed to a carbon producer into the atmosphere. The whole transportation thing, we can move away from the internal combustion engine. We can start giving dignity to the Native Americans because they actually have a lot to offer. So my message is, don't lose hope. Get engaged with the things that we can do and help support them, because they won't happen if we're not supporting them, and we need them to happen. You know, there is a lot of urgent stuff out there. We need them to happen faster and bigger than they are happening now. But most of the stuff in the book is proven stuff. It's been done. It's the technology has been mostly worked out. It's really about scaling it and applying it in our personal lives.
Right. Well, I'm happy we have messengers like you that are talking about this, especially on this program. So, John, as we end, can you tell people where they can find more about you and get the book?
Yes. Well, my website, www.jonbiemer, JONBIEMER, jonbiemer.com, gives you links to the online booksellers. It's being sold online, and that's the best way to do it. You can go to Barnes & Noble, you can go to Amazon and get it directly from them. And your library will eventually carry it, especially if you ask them to.
Right. Well, we hope that people go to your website, jonbiemer.com, and buy it from them, because we don't want to, we try not to, I guess, on this channel. We do not want to give more money to Amazon. So we do hope people go to your website again, www.jonbiemer.com. Definitely check them out. And John, I look forward to reading the book. I just got it today, so I'm excited to read it. And I appreciate everything you said on here. And again, we need more messages like you, and I'm happy you came on. Thanks so much for your time today, John.
You're welcome, and thank you.